let me bring in our Polo Sandoval and CNN legal analyst Philip Holloway. So, Polo, to you first, what happens next?
Well, you know, Fred, that's a question that is not so easily answered. That's because some of the key players involved in William Porter's now mistrial are still under a gag order since that decision was made last week. So it's very difficult to hear from some of these individuals who are key players in the case. But that being said, we have heard from several of our legal analysts offering their input, and their take at this point seems to be that the ball is in the court of prosecutors. They are the ones who need to make a very key, very critical decision here in this case. Do they move forward retrying Porter? Do they select a new jury and then essentially do this all over again? Or do they perhaps potentially even offer a plea deal for Porter? That's something that obviously would not be very well received by the people of Baltimore that have already been through so much. But ultimately, we do expect tomorrow for the courthouse to be open yet again. There is potential for some development sometime next week. So a lot of people in the city of Baltimore will be watching very closely, Fred, because I was there really on and off since April. And then, of course, throughout the trial process, I can tell you that this level of uncertainty, this not knowing, is what has people holding their collective breath. And
so, Polo, you know, so in a couple of weeks, we may hear something about, you know, a retrial, you know, for Porter. But meantime, you know, what does this do for Goodson's scheduled trial?
Right. Well, if prosecutors do choose to retry this case yet again, ultimately the judge, the presiding judge here, Barry Williams, would have to make that decision. Does he, in essence, can stay with the order that they previously had set up with Porter leading the way, or do they perhaps reshuffle some of these cases? So again, these are critical decisions that will have to be made in the next few days, ultimately, and then after that happens, then we may have a better idea of exactly what will happen, both with the defense and also with prosecutors.
And then, you know, Philip, what does a mistrial do to impact other trials? We're talking about 6 officers as a whole. So if a mistrial for one, the first one up, what does this do? How does this impact the other 5 potential trials?
Well, good afternoon, Frederica. You're absolutely correct. This can affect all of the trials. This is essentially one big ball of wax. They're separate trials, but it's essentially part of a bigger the whole case, basically, against all of the officers. So when this mistrial occurred, it threw the prosecution's plans right out the window, because what they had wanted to do was convict Officer Porter and then have him testify as a witness for the state, assuming that they could force him to do that. But the problem with that now is that, A, he still enjoys his Fifth Amendment privilege. They can't force him to testify. Even if the jury had convicted him, he still could not be forced to testify, because his conviction would not be final, Frederica, until any appeals were exhausted. So there's nothing they could do short of offering him some sort of sweetheart plea deal that was just mentioned, probably would not go over very well with a lot of people in Baltimore. And I suspect that you may not be able to find a jury in Baltimore that can reach a consensus, because there are so many strong feelings on both sides of this. If you get just 1, maybe 2 stealth jurors, people that will lie about their true intentions just so they can get on the jury, this can happen again. They should have moved it out of Baltimore to start with, and I still think they should do it going forward if they try any of these other cases.
Could they still for the other 5? How do they make that argument?
Well, they absolutely can, and I think they should move it. You know, the defense had asked for it. The prosecution disagreed with that idea, and they opposed the motion, and the judge sided with the prosecution. But as we see, there are people that have very strong feelings on both sides of this case, and even if they didn't intentionally lie to get on the jury, there's really no way to set aside some deeply held conviction. If you're really pro-police, or you're really pro-prosecution or something like that, or pro-defense in this case, and you wind up in that jury room, it's going to be very difficult to convince someone who doesn't see it your way that it should be looked at another way. So the possibility is very, very great, in my opinion, for the lack of ability to convict or reach a verdict on any number of these cases.
Yeah, you brought up a lot of good points there, because if a potential intention was for the prosecutors to use Mr. Porter as a witness in the other cases, why wouldn't they make a stronger case for some sort of plea deal if they were counting on his testimony in the other cases, as opposed to trying to make his be the first one out of the gate?
Well, his case was supposedly the strongest one, Frederica, and if they could not get a jury to agree on that...
But doesn't that seem strange, too? I mean, why would that be the strongest if there was really no precedence for putting people in seatbelts? This is the one time that he didn't put Freddie Gray in a seatbelt, then that wouldn't necessarily go to negligence, would it?
Well, see, that's all part of what the defense challenged. They brought in arguably the best forensic pathologist in the country, Dr. DeMaio, who said that the injuries sustained by Freddie Gray, to his medical satisfaction, probably occurred much further along in his ride to the jail than when Officer Porter had any interaction with him. So if a jury or a juror or a group of jurors believes Dr. DeMaio and says, hey, if it's good enough for this guy, it's good enough for me, that is enough reasonable doubt right there. And jurors are told, if you have an honest and legitimate doubt, hold on to that doubt. Don't let it go. And that's probably what we had in the jury room. I don't know what the split was. I'm very curious to find out. And the lawyers on both sides of this would be well advised, if they haven't already done it, to try to talk to these jurors to find out what went wrong in the jury room, what worked well, what didn't work well. How can we do this better if we try this case again? All
right, Phil Holloway, thank you so much. Polo Sandoval, keep us posted, Polo, on whether there would be an argument for change of venue and if there does become a date for a new trial. Thanks so much, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Good afternoon.